The U.S. under-20 men's national team has successfully navigated the group stage and round of 16 of the Concacaf under-20 championship. But now, things are about to get tricky. The stakes are about to be raised. There are 3 games, hopefully, to go. And let's talk a little bit about the quarterfinal, semifinal, and final, and what we thought of the tournament so far. As we did for the last 2 U-20 videos, I'm joined again by Gideon Sutherland. So welcome back to the channel once again. You know him already by now. Gideon, let's jump right into the video. Do you have anything to say before we begin?
Thank you for having me.
We'll start by talking a little bit about the games we've had so far. Very briefly, the 4 games. Now, when we started the tournament, when we did the preview, kind of had the same thinking there. First 4 games don't really matter. As long as we get the job done, as long as we win the group, beat Nicaragua, then we get to the important games. And we have some things to take away, but at the end of the day, the opponents haven't been that high. So, Gideon, we'll start with the St. Kitts game and the Cuba game. I'll put those together because those were the 2 convincing wins in the group stage against teams that we should be beating. Anything to say? What were the main takeaways for you from those games?
I mean, I think it was more of a gauging individual quality rather than and how the team is playing rather than the level of opponent. Are they making the right passes even when they don't have time and space? Are they forming and functioning? Are they trying to play the possession game that we want to be playing and have been instituting over the past 6 months with our new coach? And I think they've delivered on those games with them. I think it's also sort of shown like what certain players are really good at and taking advantage of the weaker opponents to rack up some goals, like Quinn Sullivan. But there's not too much to take away from it other than we got the job done. They gave they didn't play down to the level of those teams, which is comforting. They did what they came to do and they got the job done.
What later in the video we'll go into stock up, stock down, stock maintained, but I think for the most part there were a couple of guys who were relative unknowns coming into the tournament, either having not been involved very much in the cycle so far, or maybe playing in a league where they don't get a whole lot of attention from the most of the American fans. A lot of those guys have really established themselves and shown that they have a place on this team, and everyone who's watching can learn a little bit more about them, and they've definitely shown what they can do. Then we'll talk about the Canada game. It was the middle game of the group stage. It was a weird one because if you want to look at the XG, the expected goals numbers, the United States had 2.58. Canada had 0.58. Honestly, it felt like we had higher than that. It felt like more than that. But we came away with a 2-2 draw. Does that result concern you at all, that we were unable to take our chances and were so susceptible at the back, especially when it was that back line there of it was Craig and Fokranis in that game?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think a lot of people are overblowing some of the problems our back line had in that game. I think out of all 4 players, Holiday was the worst, and going forward and in defense, you saw Cuevas and Brendan Craig. Some would get caught at points and times, but for the most part, I'd say they were solid. The first goal, I think, was a letdown from our defensive mid and for Fokranis on the initial tackle, and then Craig sort of leaving Cuevas out to dry, even though he had 3 opportunities to complete the tackle. Just sort of we lost the play, and then on the second goal, there's not much you can do on that own goal. And it's not really Brady's fault either. It just an unwise header in the wrong spot by Holiday. So
I think that in that game, one of the big concerns coming to that tournament was really emphasized. And because of how bad the defenses were for Cuba and St. Kitts and Nicaragua, we haven't really had to worry about it. But just there is no number 9. The only number 9 really on this team is Tyler Wolfe, and he's not suggested anything positive at all, really. So I don't know. I just feel like we should have scored a lot more goals in that game. I feel like we could have scored a lot more goals in some of the other games too. It's still a bit of a concern for me, but we'll just have to see if some of the guys like Quinn Sullivan, Diego Luna can deliver against better opposition. But for the Canada game, it does feel like it was a bit of a fluke. It was a tricky game. Canada has some really good players. But again, that's a team that just got knocked out by Guatemala and lost to Cuba. So, it's not the best result to only get a point against them.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the Nicaragua game, which was, as we're recording this last night, once it's coming out, it will have been 2 days ago. It was a 5-0 win. The first half was not convincing at all. Second half was much more positive. I think, obviously, it was a rotated team. A lot of the best players on the team didn't start the game. I don't know. I feel like, again, like I said, the first half was really underwhelming. And the team still has some growing to do in the final third.
You saw a lot of the right decisions being made in the first half, but not the execution. I really do think it's time to just deal with it. The fact that Quinn Sullivan should be our 9.
Agreed.
He has the skill set of a 9. He presses. He has the stamina. He makes the right runs. He has the heading ability. He has the finishing ability. But he can't beat a player on the wing on the dribble. And that's his biggest flaw. He has no progression, but he's technical enough to hold up the ball, receive it, and play a good pass. And so when he isn't able to even create something against Nicaragua or St. Kitts and Nevis or any of these teams, when he's not able to really create, but he is putting these chances away at a high volume, which he's doing well. I mean, you saw it, his runs have been fantastic. There's no real reason why he shouldn't be the 9, especially when you have players who can beat players on the dribble and have excelled on the wing when put in those positions.
I think his ability to make runs in behind is too valuable to sacrifice. And if nothing else, for that reason alone, he should be the 9. But also his ability to finish chances just hasn't been matched by anybody else in this tournament. And some guys like Paxton Aronson maybe should have been held to a higher standard to that degree. For some reason, we'll go into the lineup and what we think should it be toward the end of the video. But Mikey Vara seems to prefer Paxton Aronson as the number 9. I just don't think that's the best role for him. I like him either on the wing or as the 10, where he can be a more creative player and, of course, can still arrive in the box to score. But I just don't think that he can make those runs in behind as well as Quinn Sullivan. And I don't think that athletically he matches, of course, what Cade Cowell could do in that position as well, even though Cowell has also been deployed on the wing. Now we're going to go look at pretty much a bunch of the players now. Who's had their stocks go up? I think there have been a few. Who's had their stocks maintained? Also a few. Who's had their stocks go down? Less players we can say that about. So we'll start with the letdown. Who was the biggest letdown for you in this tournament?
So I'd say pretty obvious is Michael Holiday out of Orlando. I was thinking that he was going to be a serviceable backup and someone we could rotate really. But every chance he's gotten, he's just seemed out of place with the 11. I think he doesn't have what we need going forward, and he's too inconsistent on the back, and it just sort of leaves you wondering why we didn't maybe call someone like a Jacob Green who can play on both sides, or a Devin Tanton, or a Caden Pierre from SKC, all of which who I think would have performed better these past few games on either side of the pitch. And I think it's going to potentially impact us later in the game, later in the tournament with Amir Cuevas, who's been our best fullback and maybe even our best defender. If he's not getting rest, we could see a drop-off in form. So Holiday's probably been the biggest disappointment for me.
Yeah, we definitely look at stocks maintained, stocks up. It depends on how much you've watched him before. But Mauricio Cuevas, this entire tournament, every time I've been watching him play, I've really just been wondering to myself, where could this guy be right now if he wasn't stuck at the Galaxy not playing for a year and a half? Because he has elite talent. He is one of the most talented players on this team, and it really is a shame that he had that stagnant period there for reasons that were out of his control. But he's been excellent. My only concern is, like you said, the options to back him up, namely Michael Halliday, aren't good. And he's also had to play some minutes at left back to fill in as rest for Noah Allen. So the concern is he's had to play every 2 days. He had to play 1, 2, 3, 4 games. Like, we go into these 3 games, these are the ones that matter. What if because he's not necessarily at the highest fitness level either, because he's only been playing soccer for 5 months, So we'll see what happens with him, but hopefully he'll be able to manage that stress load and doesn't pick up an injury at all. Another player. Oh yeah, we'll talk about some of the players who the expectations weren't super high for, but haven't changed our minds on that. I'll start with Tyler Wolfe, the number 9. He can also play in the wing. He's been a 9 for this team. Yeah, he's been pretty disappointing. He's just it's not a shock. I don't really know how he hasn't been a very effective option in that number 9 position.
Yeah, if we're talking about players who maintain their stock, for me, it's got to be Daniel Edelman for the most part. He's not been good or bad. I think he's been pretty neutral player. He pairs well with McGlynn, but other than that, I don't even think he's really the starter at the 6 when you're talking about best 11 right now. So I'd say Edelman's sort of just a neutral player on that playing field for me.
Yeah, now for me, we'll go into Sullivan and Luna because those have been probably the 2 biggest stock ups on the wider scale. But for me, the biggest stock up that surprised me a little bit, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, Alex Alvarado. He came into it a virtual unknown to a lot of people. He hasn't been involved this entire cycle. They've been trying to get him called up, but he hasn't been made available by Vizela. And he's really come in and shown that he belongs and that he's a player that really fits the mold. And I know this is more of a bigger picture thing. He really fits the mold of what Berhalter likes out of his midfielders. So if he can progress, he's definitely a player who could have a national team in his future. But he's been a good player for me, and I think he should probably he's a very reliable option to start in the midfield. What other player has impressed you other than, because we'll get back to Luna and Sullivan?
I will say, it's been interesting with the center back, seeing how we've rotated. We've tested every possible center back rotation, and just I think for Kranis has impressed me a bit more. He seems to be, at least from what I'm gauging, the number 1 as he has the most starts. That could change, and that's in Mikey Varis's view. I personally don't think he's number 1, but he hasn't been bad per se. He's been what I thought he would be, and a bit more. His passing is better than I thought it would be. He's solid on defense for the most part, untested albeit. And then Puskas has been able to play the 6 more than I thought he would. And I think he's going to he's sort of made that role his own in this camp. And he will be a starter in bigger games. So those 2 players have sort of impressed me.
Before we go over to those 2 players I've been hinting at for a while, I'd be remiss to not mention Chris Brady. He didn't start the first game. He started all 4 games since. He seems to be the number 1. And, he's just coming back from a couple weeks off for injury. That's why he's getting all these games, to make sure he's fully sharp, because he is the best goalie in this tournament and is a very good goalkeeper prospect. I don't think you can really blame him for the 2 goals against Canada. Other than that, he's kept 2 clean sheets. So now that he's getting back up to full sharpness, getting ready for match fitness, I think he's going to be a key part of these last couple of games. Now, Quinn Sullivan talked a little bit about before. He's been impressive. He's been showing what he can do and why he should be the starting number 9 for this team rather than playing on the wing or in the middle. But Diego Luna has been the biggest surprise for everyone, I think, pretty much in this tournament. Going into it, he was seen as the super sub. We discussed him as probably one of the only guys who can come off the bench and make an attacking impact. But he's been more than that. he's established himself as a must start for this team pretty much. The last game against Nicaragua, it was his wonderful move that set up Quinn Sullivan for the first goal. Obviously, he scored the penalty, had some other really nice plays, going at defenders one-on-one and creating chances. And also he created some chances for Cade Cowell and Jack McGlynn getting 2 assists against Canada. Diego Luna has been the best player of this tournament so far. Do you have anything to add about how he surprised you? Has he not surprised you? What do you think of him so far?
Well, I think he's definitely had more of an impact, and it's been really good seeing Diego Luna because it's when you're trying to assess player and watch players, a lot of people haven't got to see a lot of him, and now we're getting to see that right before he truly starts to integrate with RSL, and it makes you really excited for what he might be doing at RSL. It seems like he can't get the ball off his foot, and his like almost two-footedness, as we've seen him take a penalty with his right and corners with his left, has been really impressive. I like him. I like his vision. I think that's one of his more underrated things is like he's knowing when he needs to pass rather than continuing to dribble, which he has done excellently so far. He's dribbled through many players, but at the same time, he's not doing so in a necessarily selfish manner. So his ability to create and score has been pretty impactful, and I can't wait to see what we got going forward.
Perfect. And there's also maybe a bit of a question about which position he's going to slot in some of these games, given how much attacking talent there is and how he fit all those guys in. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the lineup and what we want to see as the primary lineup going into these final 3 games. Just a reminder for everyone watching for the structure. I mean, we were Canada losing to Cuba and then getting knocked out, threw everything into chaos a little bit and changed who we had to play. So it's going to be Costa Rica on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time on FS2 and 2DN. That is going to be the quarterfinal. We win that, we're in the U-20 World Cup. We then would proceed to play Honduras, or I believe it's Panama. Most likely Honduras because they're at home. That semifinal would be on the 1st of July, I think. And that is to qualify for the Paris Olympics in 2024. Then, if we win that game on the 1st, we get to the final, which is on the 3rd, which would presumably be Mexico. And we're just playing for a trophy at that point. But focus on Costa Rica right now. Who are you starting in this match? Well, yeah, let's let you run through your goalkeeper and back line.
All right, so I got to go Brady in goal. I could see Carrera, but I think Brady in goal. I think Brady is the better goalkeeper as of right now. I got Mauricio Cuevas on the right, Brandon Craig, Jalen Neal coming back to be a partnership. I really like their passing ability in that Cuba game and just what I saw and the stability there. Noah Allen on the left.
I just agree with that. That was my 5 at the back with the back 4 and the goalie as well. I think most people would agree with that. For Kranis has been good, like you mentioned, but I still think that Craig and Jalen Neal are the best pairing that there is. Obviously, Neal actually got on the score sheet in the last game, which was really good to see for him. But now we'll hop into the midfield. You gave us a bit of a sneak peek there. You said you want to see a double pivot. Maybe explain that and who you want to see as the 3 in the middle of the field.
So double pivot of Costa and Alvarado. I think they play well off of each other. I'm not necessarily sold with Costa's defensive ability just yet. And so that's why I've opted for more of a double pivot in that. And it also allows us to free up a position for a 10, which we've seen a lot of our players sort of be a hybrid 8-10 role, sort of more attacking than the other 8. But in this role, I just opted for a sole number 10, and that would be Diego Luna for me. I think it's just his passing ability has been pretty spot on, and just his ability to move the ball forward has been great. And because of that, I want to see more of that in the middle of the park.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I think we could stick with the 6-8-10 that we've been running. So effectively, there's a 6, a lone 6. You have an 8 who has some defensive responsibilities, and then you have the more advanced 8 which is effectively a 10, who has more attacking responsibilities, more passing, more creating. And I'm going to kind of spoil who's in my front three, but I like Puxas as a 6. I like Alvarado as the 8, who can also help out on defense. And for me, I have Paxton Aronson as the 10, as the attacking 8, whatever you want to call it, in that midfield, which would then put Diego Luna on the left. He can still come inside, still create a little bit, but I like his ability to take defenders one-on-one, go drive at the goal a little bit. And that's what we really saw against Nicaragua, where he was really effective in creating those chances at the end of the first half and beginning of the second half. So obviously we have a different midfield shape, and I'll assume, because I have Luna on the left, who's your front three then?
So my front three would probably most likely, I've liked what Clark has done, but I'm leaning towards having Cowell on the right, not because I think he's a better player, but just because of almost wanting to have someone to come in for that 10 role. And I don't necessarily trust Nico at a higher level. So I'd have Clark almost as a super sub for Luna in this roster. So you have Cowell on the right because of that. Aronson on the left. And then they can go in and out, changing spots. And then, of course, Sullivan at the 9.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment for me about what you mentioned about Clark and Cowell. I still think that Clark is too good not to start him. I just think that he's just got that soccer IQ that's higher than a lot of the other guys in the field and can really just make stuff happen. He just knows what to do in the final third. And Cowell doesn't have that. I would still put Diego Luna on the left, Caden Clark on the right, and Quinn Sullivan as the 9, with Cade Cowell, the odd man out there, and he can be the super sub off the bench, who, again, he can still get those runs in behind, still go up against tired legs as well. That's an advantage he has with his runs and strength and physicality and athleticism. So, but I could see it being Cowell on the right. I just don't want it to be Cowell on the left because he's not been very good when he has to cut inside. Other than that goal against Canada, which was a really nice goal, he's been kind of disappointing on the left for me. So I don't really want to see him in that role. I'd rather see him on the right or down the middle. But other than that, that's pretty much all I had to say. Let's give our predictions for Costa Rica. Costa Rica, we shouldn't underestimate them. Now, they're not as good as they are at the senior level. Don't get me wrong, but it's never a team you can underestimate. So, what is your prediction for this Costa Rica game?
I'm gonna go 3-1. I think they might catch us on a counter, but other than that, I just think we create too many chances not to put away in high fashion. So I'll go 3-1.
I like that. I'm going to go with 2-0. I'm confident enough that we'll be able to restrict their attack. That's not their best strength, but I'm still a little bit concerned about our ability to finish chances. And hopefully Quinn Sullivan, hopefully Paxton Aronson can really step up in this game and make sure we finish as many chances as we can. But I'm just going to go with 2-0. Relatively comfortable, but I don't think we've been clinical enough, and that's my biggest concern. But I still think we'll advance to semifinals to face Honduras in their own stadium with the Olympics on the line. So, yeah, that's pretty much all we have for you today. So don't forget to like the video and subscribe to me. Follow Gideon on Twitter. I'll put some links in the description, which you can check out, stuff from him, stuff from me, whatever. But yeah, thanks for watching the video, and there will be a video ahead of the Honduras game if we can beat Costa Rica. So we have to do that. But I will see you guys later.